And now, your host, Brandon Hilder.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Brandon Hilder. I hope you're all having a fantastic day today. So today, our special guest is Dennis Jagard of 10 Foot Pole. Dennis is the lead singer. Now, before we get on into that, let's go ahead and give the song The Getaway by 10 Foot Pole a little listen. Now, without further ado, The Getaway by 10 Foot Pole. How are you doing today, Dennis?
Great, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. We got clear skies out here, which is like the first in 2 weeks, so that's nice.
Oh, we're a little overcast here in Boise, Idaho. We had some clear weather earlier today, which is cool because I got some speakers at my front door because I'm getting ready to do some acoustic touring. And to do it, I'm having an acoustic party at my house with like family and friends. And I use that as a rationalization to buy some PA gear, which I've always wanted to do. And I'm planning on taking that on the road with me when I do like solo acoustic projects on my way to band practice in Quebec.
Wow. Idaho, is that where you live?
Yeah, I live in outside of Boise, Idaho.
I used to live
two
in
of
Idaho.
my band members are in Quebec, which is pretty far drive. So rather than just like try to, meet them out there, fly out there, I'm going to try to drive out there in the band van with like my backline playing acoustic house parties on the way.
Wow. I mean, might as well like get the most out of your travel, right?
Yeah. And I also just love playing that way. Like I love doing the acoustic stuff, and it's a good chance for me to kind of, I also hate long drives. And so by playing a lot of parties along the way, it's kind of like, breaks up the trip a lot.
Now, I actually used to live down in Idaho. I don't know if you've ever been to Rexburg, but that's where I used to live.
Nice. I did. I've done some sound jobs in East Idaho for like Avenged Sevenfold. And,
oh, wow.
Who else? Who's that guy? Alice Cooper? Or that might have even been in Montana. I did when I first moved to Idaho, there was a sound company that traveled a lot, like sound and stages and lights. And I remember going to back in East Idaho, but definitely Avenged Sevenfold was a pretty sweet gig.
Wow. So in the early 1980s, you started playing music, and when you first started, did you think you would continue doing this throughout the years?
I did not. And so I would recommend to other aspiring musicians to try to practice a little bit every day, like even if it's just 15 minutes or so, because now when I look back, I can't believe that in 1982 I started playing guitar, and like right now I just wish I was a much better guitarist. And I've spent a lot of time writing songs and playing music, but I kind of never thought that I would keep going, and so I never was that serious about it. And like just like right now I'm literally taking guitar lessons and trying to be a better guitarist. It's so funny, but it's also a lot of fun. And and I just wish like along the way I had kind of put aside like 15 or 20 minutes a day just to learn a little bit, like learn something new every day. And then I imagine things would be so much better now if I had done that, if I had put in that time. But yeah, so that was 1982, and it was junior high school, and just kind of like making music with other kids in school, and had no idea what would come of it. But we just saw other people doing it, like really ugly guys playing in rock bands and getting lots of admiring fans. We wanted to be admired too. And that just started this long path.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Does it ever boggle your mind to think that you've been doing this for as long as it has been, just to like sit back and think about that?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, I didn't plan it or kind of prepare for it. For me, music has not always. There were times when I was like, okay, this is it. This is going to be my main focus, my main job. And most of those times actually were a bit stressful when I really tried to do it. Like, we're going to be a full-time band. We're going to go out and tour all the time. The times that I've enjoyed music more has been what more of my life has been like the approach of like focus on making money with my audio, like with my main career. And then in my spare time, work on music so that I'm not trying to expect my music to pay the bills. Because for 10-Foot Pole, it's never really been profitable enough to, especially now I'm a parent, I've got 3 dependents essentially, plus a doggy. So 4 dependents really. And, like it's just too much stress on your music and your creativity to try to say that you're going to live off it. I mean, it's great if you are successful and you've already got like money flowing in and you just don't have to worry about it. But 10-Foot Pole has been like just successful enough to keep me trying, but not successful enough to be able to feed my dog with it. But my sound career, right? So I'm an audio engineer for concerts and events and stuff. Luckily, that has been at different times has been very successful. And on and off. And so basically I generally make money doing sound for other artists, and then I spend money trying to make myself as an artist be more successful with hopes that in my old age I could do like acoustic touring and stuff and just be able to play songs and tell stories for a living. Even if not for a living, just maybe that's my retirement, that I don't think I'll ever stop as long as I can physically do it. So
yeah, wow, yeah, that's cool though. The part where you're talking about how you do the one job to help with the band and continue your own music. Yeah, to me, that definitely means that you're completely dedicated and love what you do. So that's a really good thing.
Yeah, and then it's up to me to take breaks. If it's not fun, then there's kind of no point in doing it. And different parts of my life, we've taken a pause and then come back to it. And really, it just comes down to, it's different. If you're the Foo Fighters or something, they're like under pressure to like, make hay while the sun shines kind of vibe. Yeah. But if you're not under that kind of pressure, then there's no point in putting pressure on yourself other than whatever your own like aspirations are. So, sometimes I feel like it's really urgent that I do songwriting, and then other times I just kind of focus on other things, like trying to make the artist that I'm doing sound for sound great and just kind of not really think about my music at all.
Yeah. And what you're talking about, how some bands will like play, then something tragic will happen or something will happen and they're just going to have to continue to go because it's like, you're this band, this is your bar. Like that boggles my mind sometimes. Like Foo Fighters, great example. Their drummer sadly, passed away and they're still going. And another example, Modest Mouse. Their drummer also passed away. And I actually thought they might have been done. But now they're touring with Weezer. And I was like, oh, okay. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have lost a band member too. Not one that had been in the band for a long time. So it's a little different than the Foo Fighters. And I don't know Modest Mouse enough to say anything about it, but yeah, like in the Foo Fighters case, that was like, I mean, that's just such a huge deal.
Yeah.
From a music perspective, I mean, how something impacts you personally versus whether or not you should keep making music is a whole other, kind of discussion or decision. But, I 10-foot pole's been more like a baseball team. I like using baseball metaphors.
Yeah.
Even though I haven't played since I was in Little League as a kid, but it still seems appropriate for 10-foot pole's history. So I like using baseball metaphors, which is like, you field the team, and it's 10-foot pole, at least currently, is my team. Like, I'm kind of like the coach, but also like a important player. And, if the first baseman doesn't show up, you get another first baseman.
Yeah.
Not to be heartless, like, obviously if somebody dies, that's a big deal and you pay respects and everything. But on the other hand, you're not going to stop playing baseball. So, I mean, cause once you're in that, like, you kind of, can't quit, really. I mean,
yeah.
It's very difficult to quit once you've gone down a path that far. Have you seen the film The Wrestler? Mickey Rourke?
I can't say
I would recommend it.
Okay.
I would recommend it. It's about a wrestler, and he had like some success, and then spends the rest of the film kind of like wrestling. It's pro wrestling in these like kind of like DIY. It is like the most punk thing I've ever seen. But the summary basically is this guy loves wrestling so much that even though he's like, just his body is completely wrecked from it, and he's on all these painkillers, and like essentially he knows he's going to die if he keeps wrestling. He tries to stop wrestling, but he can't. He just can't. And he's not like wrestling like on TV in front of millions of people. We're talking about like he's wrestling at VFW halls in front of like 50 people.
Oh, wow.
But that's like punk rock. Like, once you had the taste of the glory and had people just clapping for you and singing your words and stuff, it's hard to give that up. Because what in life is better than that? Even if it's only for 50 people.
Yeah.
Luckily, I didn't have to make the decision to like either stop or have an early death, unlike the wrestler. But that kind of feeling and how important it is. Like, well, the one scene in the wrestler that's pretty amazing is, so the guy's trying to work in this deli making sandwiches for people, and he basically gets so frustrated dealing with customers because he's not wrestling that he like saws his hand with the bread cutter. I can't remember, the meat cutter, whatever it is. He basically purposely injures himself so that he has to quit working in the bread in the sandwich store.
Oh my goodness!
So he can go back to wrestling, where he's gonna die from abusing his body in wrestling.
Jeez.
On that happy note.
Oh my goodness! Just true dedication. That's what that is. But like, seriously.
Well, it's like it's not so much. I guess dedication is one thing, but it's almost like an addiction. It's almost like you just.
Yeah.
You like it so much, you just can't, like, whether you like it or not, it's like you just can't imagine your life without it. You just do it. Like, that's kind of part of your identity and part of how you imagine going forward.
That makes sense.
And maybe other businesses are like that, but I don't know, that's not the life I chose, so I can't really say. I don't know if there's like lawyers out there that like, I've got to get to my next case. I've got to be in the court fighting for justice or whatever.
Yeah.
But maybe there are like architects. Like, I've got to make this building. I've got to design this bathroom perfectly.
Yeah, I guess whatever makes you tick. Yeah. Because once you find that thing, you ain't going to want to stop for sure. So talking about all that, when would you say you like first discovered your passion for music?
Well, that was it basically as a kid. So when we were in junior high, our band started out, and we played in the local junior high school. We played in a battle of the bands. We started doing backyard parties with these other punk bands. And before too long, like we were invited to go on a tour. I think because they wanted to use my mom's van, and also because so our singer Scott Rudinsky was a drummer, and so our first tour, Ill Repute's drummer couldn't go on tour, and so basically they asked us to tour with them. But I'm not sure if it was because Scott could drum, and then my mom had a van. So I think Ill Repute was like, "Hey, let's invite Scared Straight with us because Denny's got a van and Scott could play drums." So that's it's perfect. And so we went on tour, and Scott played drums for them. We did not take my van, and and it was amazing. We toured across the country, and then in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, our car and trailer got stolen one night.
Oh my goodness!
And I didn't care. I was ready to go buy a new guitar. I have my emergency credit card. That's exactly what this is for. Like I go to Guitar Center, I'm like, I'm ready to go. And like we played one show on borrowed equipment. I remember playing a solo, and it sounded like jazz because there was no distortion on it. It was like a PV amplifier in Baltimore, Maryland. And the Ill Repute guys were like debating whether or not to keep going or go home. And we all finally agreed to keep going. But then Brian Walsby, our drummer, suddenly changed his mind and decided that he was going to do art for Corrosion of Conformity and move to Raleigh. I think it was Raleigh,
Really?
where Corrosion of Conformity was. Yeah, that was the closest I ever came to really like attacking a band member. Well, that's a whole other story. But I was pissed. I was like, Brian, we just spent like all these hours like deciding what we're going to do. But anyway, yeah. But we're on good terms now. Brian Walsby, he's a great guy, great drummer. And he has a book called Self-Impunishment, if anyone's interested in the Brian Walsby story. Like self-employment, but you're punishing yourself. So it's self-impunishment.
Look it up.
So Brian Walsby also is an artist who did like the cover of Nardcore and a few other cover of 7 Seconds, Talk Together, Rock Together album. So he has kind of like a goofy art, cartoony style of art that he's famous for. He's one of our many drummers as we go back into the time. That was 1985, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we didn't learn our lesson from that tour because that winter we did another tour to like Texas and Arizona and stuff. Like we were bitten. We were like ready to go, and on and off just kept doing it and are still doing it. Essentially, it's still the same band. Basically, it's just had a lot of different members, and I took over singing in 1994, but or 95. But yeah, it's just amazing that it's been that many decades, like just doing this.
Yeah, I mean,
you'd think like we would
awesome.
Either have given up or become like huge stars, but neither one.
I will say I definitely appreciate it on a fan basis because that just makes a whole bunch of good music I can listen to, not just like limited to 1 or 2 albums. I got plenty, and yeah, it's great.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy it. I just keep writing because I kind of feel like, well, what if this is the one where I write like just some amazing song? And like my idea of like when I finally made it is when they're playing our songs at hockey rinks, like like We Will Rock You, like the boom boom kind of thing, or something. Like if I write a riff that they're playing at like football games and hockey rinks and stuff, like so not just like in the punk rock world, but in the general population. That would be my idea of like having made it. So I'm still trying, and who knows, maybe that riff's in me and it just hasn't been recorded yet.
Yeah. I was doing a little bit of research and like talking about like your music being places. I noticed that you had a whole bunch of songs in some video games, like mainly BMX games and one snowboarding game. But I just thought that was really cool. Like, what did you think about that when that first started happening?
That was pretty exciting. I mean, that was in the 90s, and I'm not really an expert on how or why it happened. There was like the 90s just had this huge explosion of punk being in I think it had to do with kind of the rise of like snowboarding and the popularity of skateboarding and the popularity of video games, like kind of all came to a head where there were just a lot of people who were interested in that style of music for content behind these, new games, which were pretty fun. And also people were, there were actual skateboarders out there and actual snowboarders out doing the things that would at the time were considered kind of extreme sports, like kind of new-ish things. Like snowboarding was fairly new. And so it was exciting. And, there were bands like The Offspring that suddenly a punk band sold 7 million records of the album Smash. And it was like, just amazing. And suddenly there's like, Nirvana was on the radio. We're like, wow, it just changed a lot compared to the 80s, kind of a like really polished rock sound dominated the radio, to all of a sudden we were in this world where there was grungy stuff, whatever you wanted to call it, punk or underground sounding rock. And so it was really exciting. And that carried over into all these other things too, like video games and compilations. And in that year, 1994, we toured with NoFX. So we had our first record out on Epitaph, and Epitaph Records was blowing up with Rancid and Offspring and Pennywise and NoFX. And we went on a tour with NoFX. And in fact, we were actually invited to open for the Offspring in Europe.
Wow.
And we were so excited, but we couldn't take it because our singer was a pro baseball player. And so, it was really difficult. And that was around the time we made the decision that we kind of were trying to get the singer to commit to more time during his off season. And he just couldn't. He couldn't really commit to it. Like we were just kind of saying, like, we need a minimum of, a few weeks a year where we tour. And he couldn't commit to it. And so we just decided that we were going to try to make it on our own and just find a new singer. And so I tried to learn how to sing, and, basically I auditioned along with some other singers, and we decided to make me it, and which made sense because I was also the principal songwriter. So it was kind of my lyrics already on the old songs.
Oh.
And also we figured for longevity, there were some guys from other bands too that probably would have kind of helped in terms of promotion and stuff, like to get somebody from a different band in. But in the end of the day too, it's kind of like, well, I knew that I was dedicated to doing it, and I didn't know if we got somebody from a different band, if they would still be around in 3 years or 5 years. So it was kind of a choice of like going with somebody who was unknown and who knows, how it'll go, but who was totally dedicated and also being the songwriter. It kind of kept more along with how the band was going. But, we could have like picked somebody who was a little more famous or just stayed with Scott and just only played, in the off season, but we didn't know how much that was going to be. And it just killed us to see like all our friends and stuff just out playing these huge tours and doing all this stuff. And we kind of couldn't do anything. Our hands were totally tied. That was the path we took. And we're here now. Like, I don't know how it's been, like 7 or 8 albums later, still making music and, not having had huge success, but also not totally failing either. Like, we're still, there's still some people who prefer Scott's voice, our old baseball playing singer. And, there's some people who are just diehard, like fans of the Rev album and the Swill album, which is what he sang on. And, but then, like on Spotify, the biggest song is ADD, which is one of my songs singing. So it's not like we were a total, like it just was a failure after that. It just was different. Some people split and then we got new fans, but punk rock in general kind of cooled off after that period. So, it's hard to say, what could have happened or would have happened if we went a different path, but that's what we chose to do. And we played thousands of shows since then.
Wow.
So we got it off our chest.
Dang, that's awesome, man.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying thousands of big shows, but we played a lot of shows.
Hey, I think little shows are, in some cases, just as cool. Because I know a lot of the shows I've really enjoyed going to are not the most, like, biggest venues in the world. Because I actually went to a show last week, and I had such a fun time. I was right in the front row because, I mean, it wasn't a gigantic show, so I didn't have a big old mosh pit in my way. But, yeah, so I totally get that.
But you said you're in Montana, right?
I am. So we don't get many
Okay.
shows either. So I'm also grateful for what I get.
So I've done 500 Jimmy Eat World shows, like doing audio for front of house for Jimmy Eat World. And like I'm trying to think, like I've gone through Montana a couple times with them, but even with a band as big as Jimmy Eat World, they're not huge shows, like maybe 700 people at the most, I would think. So I would think a punk show you would probably not see more than a couple hundred people at in general, right? Or are there some bands that go through and still have like a huge show?
I haven't actually been able to go to any like true punk shows in Montana just because like where the concerts are, punk is not primarily popular. The thing that's very popular is metal, which I mean metal's okay. Yeah. There are grunge bands though. So I'll give you that example. So the show I went to on last weekend, it was a grunge show, and I would say there was maybe 90 people. And for Montana, that was a really big show, which sounds funny, but yeah. And then I've been to other concerts, like Third Eye Blind. I went to a concert of them in Missoula, Montana, and that one had maybe 1,000 people. And that's, I mean, if you would think of like how Third Eye Blind's attendance would be, you'd be like, yeah, it's probably a little tiny, which I think it is, but for Montana, it's pretty dang big.
No, that's pretty good, even for them, I think, like, because they're not current.
That's true.
Yeah, that's a good example. Like, it really depends on what style of music you're talking about, how things go, because in some places you can't even really have a punk show. And there's some places I've been, like, I remember being in like Saskatoon, or maybe it was Regina in Canada. And, you know, we had played shows there and we're like, wow, there's just never more than 200 people at our shows. You know, this is back in the day. Like now we wouldn't even do that many, maybe at like, you know, wow, these towns are so tiny. I can't believe we're here. There's like, you know, only 150 or 200 people. These must be tiny towns. And then we got on the highway one time and there had been a Metallica show and the whole highway was jammed. So I was like, oh, the town isn't that small. It's just that we're in the punk band playing in the little club, because Metallica's playing at like a football stadium with, I don't know, probably 30,000 people there. I had no idea that many humans were there. Like, I just thought, oh, we're in this tiny town in this tiny area. Like, I didn't think there was a population that could support a 30,000 person show, but there was. It's just you had to be Metallica to draw those people.
Oh man, I've been surprised by stuff like that too. Like I went to Hershey, Pennsylvania, which I mean, Hershey's not small, but it's not like the biggest big city in the world. And I went to a Green Day concert there, and there was like literally 50,000 people there or more. It was intense, which biggest show I've ever been to. But it was like, oh my goodness, there are so many people here. I didn't know there was that many people within this city. It was, it got crazy.
And people will travel for a show like that too. So
I traveled.
It's hard to say, but I did sound for AFI that was opening for Green Day on a tour, and it was pretty cool to kind of, you know, see that every day, get to see that. And
dang.
And also Jimmy Eat World did some shows with Green Day in Australia when I was with them. And I mean, it's amazing. Like, music is a weird thing. It's like, you know, the people who are successful are like wildly successful.
Yeah.
And, you know, I guess it's like most things in capitalism. Like, if there's like a pyramid, and the people at the top of this pyramid are just massive. And like, just when you reach that, like, whatever oligarch level of success, it's just like, you know, just massive. But that, you know, the average band has no following. And if you're lucky, you get like a little bit of a following and people know who you are and get a few people at shows. But, you know, compared to like the Foo Fighters drawing 40,000 people or something at a show, it's just such a different animal. And it's interesting to me, like how that works and how, I mean, I guess it's the same with anything with movie stars or, other things. There's such a difference between the people who win, like can win really big, but there's a lot of the rest of us who are just kind of like scraping by trying to eke out an existence, but we just can't quit. You know, it's a self-feeding thing. Like once you get to a certain level, now people are like, you know, paying you to advertise their stuff. And like, so success brings more success. Like once you reach a certain level, it's kind of like, it builds its own, like it feeds its own audience and gets bigger because of the success. Then other people kind of join in with different business things that also confirm that success and push it to more people and sell your band to other people who wouldn't otherwise hear it. And a regular band doesn't get that level of exposure because nobody's making money off them already.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's kind of the thing. And that's the same with any kind of celebrity. Like, you know, once that celebrity has this huge draw, then all of a sudden people are writing articles about them because they know people are going to read the articles.
Yeah.
And so then those articles develop more interest, more fame or whatever. So it's kind of, you know, it's like a giant, I don't know, like a giant weed or tree or something. Like the bigger it gets, the more its roots spread out and it enables it to just keep going. Whereas most people kind of have no level of support that's near that.
So weird. Yeah. So, what would you say like your favorite band in high school was? Like while you were in high school?
That's a good question. What was I listening to in high school? I'm trying to remember. Like, I think, you know, there was so much interesting music. So I was in high school in the 80s. And so, you know, obviously, like, I listened to a lot of punk and went to a lot of punk shows. But I also was interested in just generally, you know, music of all sorts. Like, you know, the rock stuff that was going on as well as the new wave or whatever they called it at the time. So I was a music fan and would try to listen to pretty much anything. So, I remember I had a girlfriend who liked Madonna. Oh, who's Madonna? You know, kind of saw that kind of like dance music get bigger. And, so I grew up Mormon. So I had a bunch of Mormon friends. Like I went to Mormon dances and stuff. So we always had like all kinds of weird music, like Wham or whatever. Like those guys loved like Oingo Boingo and like kind of the rich guy punk, we would call it, from the punk world. And, so that, you know, that there was just so much, like, there was just such a rich tapestry of music in the 80s. Like, so, I mean, even now, like I still hear the 80s music and there's a lot of like good stuff, but I also always liked the kind of classic rock stuff too. So while a lot of my friends were listening to Aha or whatever other like 80s stuff, I was still listening to Black Sabbath and Pink Floyd and stuff like that, like classic rock, but then going to shows that were more like, you know, Fugazi and Circle Jerks and Social Distortion and stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Good old Fugazi. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude.
I mean, like that's the thing. Like I just liked music. So whatever was interesting. For some reason, I remember the years kind of after that, as far as breaking artists. I remember when 9 Inch Nails kind of broke, like when I first heard Pretty Hate Machine.
Yeah.
And so that was more my college years, but I do kind of remember vividly, like Jane's Addiction. When Jane's Addiction first came out, like the Nothing's Shocking album, when I say came out, like became big enough that it was on my radar, was just like mind blown with the combination of metal and alternative, I guess I would call it, you know, the Jane's Addiction rocking guitars. So yeah, I would like kind of mix that like 80s stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I had goth periods too. Like I went to goth clubs and, you know, like the Ministry and stuff like that too. in my spare time.
That's cool. So we briefly mentioned it for a few seconds, but before 10-Foot Pole, you were in the group Scared Straight. What would you say your favorite Scared Straight song was?
Well, I should say it wasn't like before 10-Foot Pole. It just was the same band. Yeah. We just changed the name.
Yeah. Transformed into.
So, like, there was a record called Swill that was made as Scared Straight, and then we changed the name after it already was released. So the first 3,000 Swill CDs and tapes actually say Scared Straight. And a lot of them we crossed out and put stickers on that said 10-Foot Pole, like right over Scared Straight. And
I bet those are a collector's item now.
I suppose. And, and then, so as far as so when I think of Scared Straight songs, I think of the Swill album, which is really 10-Foot Pole, but I think of it as Scared Straight still. Okay. So like the song Home on Swill is one of my favorites. Maybe there was an EP we did. It might have been called Born to Be Wild because we did a cover of the Steppenwolf song on that. And so like there's a song, I think one of the more memorable songs is Another Day. And just Another Day. Yeah. We had a bunch of silly, we were teenagers writing silly stuff that we didn't really know, we didn't write it thinking, 30 years, 40 years from now, we'll be talking about this. We were just kind of like, what rhymes with skateboard? Whatever.
Yeah, that's funny.
But yeah, those were good times.
Now, out of all the albums that you've helped record and recorded, which one would you say was the easiest, and which one would you say was the hardest to actually get out?
That's a good question. I would say Rev for me was probably one of the easiest, just because I wasn't singing. Because I was just I wrote the guitar parts, wrote the lyrics, handed it off to somebody, and it was a pretty painless process. I think Subliminal Messages was probably, they're all hard in their own ways. Subliminal Messages was probably one of the hardest because we lost the label support partway through, and I decided to fund it myself, to just keep going with faith that I would find somebody to help pay for recording and stuff. And we were on Victory Records, and it was just a little bizarre, but they tried to kind of dictate what the cover would be, and we had already had an issue in Scared Straight. Scared Straight was on Mystic Records in Hollywood. And at least from my perspective, there was a time when we did some recording and I didn't think the album was done. And then all of a sudden, a couple years later, I saw it at a record store and I hated the title. The Scared Straight record was called You Drink, You Drive, You Die.
Yeah.
And I was a fairly left-wing kid at UC Berkeley, kind of wanting to support kind of freedom and open-mindedness. And here it was, it sounded like I had a band that just sounded like, you drink, you drive, we'll kill you, I don't know. It just sounded really authoritarian, not something I wanted to put on my art. And probably more importantly is it wasn't done, or at least I didn't think it had been done. But anyway, so we were I was at least sensitive about that, not wanting a record label to dictate what the album could be called or what the artwork was. Now, it's possible that the Mystic Records, it's possible that they worked with Scott, and because there was a picture of a car crash Scott had been in, and Mystic Records tried to use the whole baseball thing as a way to market it. It was Scott Rudzinski in the pitcher for the Chicago White Sox, car accident.
Yeah.
But we had nothing to do with that. I literally saw it in a record store. It was the first time I ever heard the words, you drink, you drive, you die, And so it was really just weird. And it just felt it felt like a violation,
Yeah. Yeah.
Now maybe Scott had worked together with them and it was all like done with consent, but at least from my perspective, there was no consent. There was not even a discussion about it. And when I asked Scott about it, he acted like he had no idea that either. So, which I don't know whether it was true or not, but it's possible that they worked with him and that he did okay, everything. But, so anyway, so when Victory Records was like, no, you need to use this drawing I did on a napkin. So then we sent it to the artist and he like did some, and then the owner of the record company was like, no, I mean, this exact drawing from like, was done like at a napkin at a restaurant. Like, this is your cover. I'm like, well, we're kind of a little concerned about that. And then he was like, F you. If you don't want to be, if you don't do what I say, you don't need to be on Victory Records because this is for people who want to have a victory or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't remember what he said exactly, but I do remember the FU part. But that was basically it. And so, and we had already booked drum recording with Ryan Green. And so basically we went forward and I paid Ryan Green to record the drums and the guitars and stuff. But then, the rhythm guitars and the drums we did in a professional studio. But then all the vocals and all the guitar leads and the bass guitar we did in my friend's backyard studio. And it was a lot of work because I wasn't a professional. I mean, I was a professional sound engineer, but not, all the like editing and doing our own takes of vocals and things. So that was a lot of work. And but then I ended up liking having that control and liking the end result. So this last record, Winning, is the first record that I totally just kind of did the producing on. We still had the drums recorded in Quebec by a professional recording person, but I mixed it and everything. And I did it. And we also have another guitarist who's also a producer who did a lot of guitar tracks in Quebec. And, but I would say on most songs, I mixed like all of them except 3. That guitarist mixed 3 songs. And then I did most of the editing and that, it was just a ton of work too.
Oh, I bet.
But when we say hardest, like, because I knew that I was going to do it and I had planned it that way, it wasn't hard. Like, it was hard and it took a long time, but it was also something that I wanted to do and knew I was going to do and was comfortable doing, but it was a lot of hours. Yeah. So,
I do like
recording is not my favorite thing to do, but I also do like having control.
Yeah.
Did you say you like Winning?
Yeah, I do like that album a lot. That is a great album. I have listened to that album probably 20 times.
Oh, nice.
At least. Yeah.
Nice. I'm glad people like it. The previous record we did, Escalating Quickly, we did with a professional producer, Ryan Green, again, that I had mentioned earlier. And we kind of like were a little more experimental and let him kind of go to town on it. And he had a lot of fun with kind of guitar riffs and even added some keyboard parts. And some people love it, and then some people just hated it and just giving me a lot of crap about it. Like, oh, I was like, come on, we've got like a dozen records.
Yeah.
We want to experiment once in a while, but you can't have keyboards on a 10-foot pole record.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm like, why not?
Yeah. I'm not a really big fan of when fans are like, oh, hey, yeah, this is how you have to sound now, and I want it only like this, or I'm not going to like it. Because personally, I love listening to bands when they experiment. Like, I mean, we were talking about Green Day a little bit earlier, but great example of Green Day, they're not at all the same anymore, and I love it. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I heard a Red Hot Chili Peppers song on the radio today, and I assume it's a new song because it didn't sound like them at all. I was like, yeah. I'm so glad, too, because I was really tired of how they sounded, like kind of, they always have sounded the same the last few years. And this new one, it sounded like a different singer, and it was really melodic. So
you don't
I think
remember
it's called
which
The
one
Drummer
it was?
or something, or is that maybe that's an old song and I just never heard it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like in our genre, so the opposite, I would say, is like Pennywise. There's a band that just keeps putting out the same style over and over again. and people love it and they expect that, and that's who they are and who they expect to hear. But that's not how I want to be, you know?
Yeah.
Even like Rancid was in our group, and like the first couple of Rancid records were pretty like straightforward in a certain way, and they developed a lot as they went, and I'm glad they changed, because like songs like Ruby Soho would have never come out if they just kept the same style as their first records.
Yeah.
There was a quote in the Brian Walsby in some of the Brian Walsby things, was like, there was something like, whenever I hear like some awful song playing on the radio, I always say, who the hell is this? They're like, oh, it's the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh my gosh.
Like, it's just like always just terrible. And but it's funny because in the 90s I loved it and I loved them, but it just kind of grated on me, or it kind of just kept going the same direction for too long, and I was just ready for something new. But anyway, I'm stoked I'm glad to hear them do something that was very different and melodic and fun.
I am obsessed with this music video because it's great, but the music video to The Getaway, it's just awesome. Just people who are listening, if you haven't watched it, please go watch it, because I mean, just the whole video itself, it's absolutely great. So I want to ask, what was your favorite part of this music video? Like while it was being shot, what was your favorite part of it?
Well, I'll give a little background of it. Darren Doan did a video for us on the Rev album for the song Broken Bubble, and we got to drive go-karts around.
Yep.
And it's also pretty epic. We have like fights and people like falling into the pool and explosions and stuff. So Darren Doan's dad is like, was I don't know if he still is or not, but was a special effects guy in the movies, like in the real, does real movies. And so, it was fun to have that. So that was in Thousand Oaks. And then he was supposed to do another video for us on Rev. And I think Epitaph even paid him to do it. And then, for whatever reason, we just didn't. And then on Unleashed, I don't remember why, but we just never did a video. We should have for ADD. Like, I know there was a time when Epitaph didn't even want to or didn't support doing videos. And I don't know. Epitaph was a little funky at the time because the owner was in rehab a lot and had some serious issues. And I don't remember the details, but for whatever reason, when Insider came out, we talked Darren into doing a video, and he was like, I'm going to make it up for you, because he had been paid by Epitaph like years before to do a video and we didn't do it. And I don't know why. But so when we decided to do The Getaway, the idea was like, we want to do a trailer of a film. We want to kind of do a bunch of different scenes, like even just quick scenes in different locations. The goal was like, so back in the day, there were some punk rock videos that were just really boring, like a camera in a room filming the band. And like, that they never left the room. It was all just one room. And so I wanted the opposite of that. I was like, let's just do a bunch of different locations, even if it's just like running down the street in Hollywood or something, but so many locations that people wonder if there's an actual film. Like that was the goal. So we're making a trailer to a film, and we want people to go like, was there really a film? Because there's no way this is just a band video, because there's like so much stuff going on. Like there's so many different places, like on the beach and on the rooftop, running down Hollywood Boulevard, car chases, climbing up on a billboard. Like there was just so much stuff going on. Parking lots, limousine, and like apartment buildings. There were so many different, and it was just random. We're like in Hollywood going, okay, let's stop here. We're going to run through those bushes. Okay, let's stop here. So I would say my favorite scene for myself was the end scene where I go into the water, like, because I could only do that once, right? So I had to do the thing where the waves are crashing on me and I'm like screaming, and the climax of the emotional climax of the thing. And but yeah, I mean the whole thing. Oh, and Brian Posen. So the actor, comedian, writer Brian Posen from Just Shoot Me and a bunch of other stuff he's been in now is the guy at the beginning of of that. Well, not just the beginning, but the guy that's racing cars. So while the getaway is happening, he's the one watching the trailer.
Yeah.
And he's like racing cars at the beginning. So he's an interesting, very interesting character who graciously agreed to be in video with us because we were fans of Mr. Show, and we used to actually go where they were filming Mr. Show, and we were hanging out with Brian and convinced him to be in our video. So
wow, yeah.
Anyhow,
that's awesome.
So yeah, that was a lot of fun, and I was pretty stoked with how that turned out because I felt like if you watch that, like there's at least some question in your mind, like what's going on?
Where's the movie now?
Compared to like a lot of videos where, at least back in the day, was like, it was the Offspring or Rancid had one too, where it was literally like a 1 or 2 camera shoot of you're just watching a band play in a room and then they're like changing the effects, like doing visual effects on it or something, but
this
it's just
different.
Yeah, that was it. But no matter what, like I enjoy ours. Like I think like the whole thing, and we got the Damsel in Distress for those who haven't seen it. In case I didn't sell it hard enough, we got the Damsel in Distress and the jacuzzi scene, the obligatory champagne popping. It's we've got Spies, we've got the cash handoff, we've got the Camaro we've got the Dodge versus or what's it called, Mopar. We've got the Mopar versus the Chevy, the Camaro versus the Sport Satellite car chase.
The link to the getaway will be in the description. So if you're intrigued, go listen to it. And watch it. It's a great music video. Yeah.
And while we're talking about links, I should just mention that 10footpole.com has pretty much everything that you would need to ever find. In case you forget everything else, the important thing is it's spelled out TEN. So 10footpole.com is TENFOOTPOLE.com. And, there's even things in there about like the acoustic touring that I want to do. And there's a store with where they send stuff out of Quebec. Like we have some really nice skateboard decks, for example. And, but even like links to streaming music or I think there's a collection of videos in there as well, like links to the videos. Videos are harder because they're like that was actually still like owned by Epitaph. But I think that it's still available on YouTube to see those.
As we were just talking about acoustic a little bit, the Simmer Down album, which you released in 2020, which is an acoustic album. So that had some, I think on your website, or it was a different website, I don't remember which one, but they titled it Reimagined 10-Foot Pole Songs and also some originals. What could you tell us about that album?
Well, that was that's the first record that I made as the quote producer, and it was a pandemic project, and I was home and wanted to work with audio because I'm an audio engineer, but I didn't want to sit and just study like how to use mixing boards. So instead, I just decided I'm going to make our own record and just from start to finish be the producer. So in the old days, we paid other people like. Basically, a producer's role is to tell you no. To basically go like, you know what, that idea sucks. You should do it this way. And a lot of times I'll be like, well, I've got gold records or da-da-da. I shouldn't say that. Like a lot of our producers have actually been really nice, but just the stereotypical producer role, which some of ours have, is using their experience to help guide you to make a good record, to make a better record. But I also like sometimes argued with them and sometimes thought I was right. And so I thought, well, here, I'm going to make a record and do it how I would like to do it and not, and do the melody the way I think it, cause producers can be involved like intensely, or they can kind of sit back and let you do it your own way. But everybody has a different style, but I just wanted to do one my way. And after making whatever 8 or 9 actual 10-foot pole records, the acoustic record was kind of a chance to have a pandemic project where I had plenty of time on my hands so that if I screwed it up, I could always let someone else mix it or, try to save it with hiring a professional. And, so the goal was to do about something, I think it's about half brand new songs and half old songs that are, just acoustic versions of old songs. And some of them are kind of drastically revised. Like the song The Getaway, I added a whole part in the chorus where it repeats The Getaway a few times. Yeah. And then also we had a cello player do basically like an orchestra full of cellos. It turned out, in my opinion, it turned out great. Like I was surprised by how good the cello ended up.
Oh yeah.
And was just totally stoked with it. I originally thought it would just be one cello, but it ended up being like, harmonies and stuff, like different, like a wall of cello. And so, it was kind of the idea of like, let's redo some of the old tunes, but then also do some new songs. And my goal in the long run is to be able to, because I tour a lot as a sound engineer, I'm often alone, and I got kind of bored with an electric guitar by myself, because with an acoustic guitar, I kind of felt like I could sing and play the songs and they still sounded good to me. So that turned into me playing in front of people. And then that turned into the idea of, sometimes I prefer just doing an acoustic show. So I realized, especially as I've gotten older, even doing sound, like doing sound for Jimmy Eat World, sometimes his acoustic songs were my favorites. And so making that record was kind of along the lines of like, maybe I could have like an alternate, career path of being able to just do stuff on my own where I didn't need the band, because it's expensive to bring the band along. And so the idea being that like when I'm out on tour doing sound for somebody else, I can just go play a show on my own, just with me and a guitar, and hopefully have an interested audience, even if it's only a small audience.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the reasoning behind it. And it's kind of grown into this thing where some people actually prefer the acoustic versions of things and the acoustic shows. So, which I love. Like, my main thing is I like things to be different. Like, if I just do loud music, then I get kind of bored with it, and then I tend to want to do something soft. And if I just play acoustic guitar, then I pick up an electric guitar and hear all that distortion and get excited about that. So for me, it keeps it fresh by just kind of jumping back and forth. Same thing with, like, I like being in the spotlight sometimes, but then eventually I get kind of anxiety about it. Like, people are commenting on my clothing or my shoes or my haircut or whatever. And sometimes I just want to be the sound man in the back of the room who gets like a pat on the back because of how great Weird Al sounded or something.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, for my personal happiness, I've found that changing things up really helps. So adding acoustic just kind of was like another change up, and being able to do it without having to like bring the whole band out. I think, so two of my band members, I might have mentioned it earlier, are in Quebec. So it's a big investment for me to get the whole band together to play a show, or even just to rehearse. So the idea that like I can go play an acoustic show by myself without having to fly band members out is very liberating. And also kind of cool because it's lower stress, because it's less overhead. So like I can go play an acoustic show, and if there's 50 people there, I'm okay with that. Like I can do a 50-person show. I could do a house party and call it a great show if there's 35 happy people. Yeah. Whereas if I get the band together and only 35 people show up, that's a financial disaster.
Yeah. What's the biggest number you've had at an acoustic performance?
That's a good question. I've performed at festivals in front of a lot of people. Like just an acoustic show. I'm trying to think what the biggest is. I mean, I've opened for other bands. Like I went to Costa Rica one time and opened for Bad Cop, for example.
Oh wow!
Like just so I played at their show, or I played at festivals like in front of a couple thousand people, a few thousand people here and there. But I think like the biggest, just my acoustic show, I think probably the biggest is about 350 people.
Dang, that's not bad.
No, it's great. And I mean, there's acoustics is different. Like there's some things about it that can be great. There's some things that can bug me. Like a lot of times the places that'll do acoustic shows are breweries, but it's particularly annoying if there's noise, because the acoustic show is like kind of more dramatic. Like it's very like, you want it to, at least for me, like you want it to be like a theater where people are quiet and listening, not like a bunch of drunk people at the bar, which is really hard. Even like when I'm doing sound for Jimmy Eat World, and all of a sudden, you know, they whip out the acoustic guitar and start doing this gentle tune, and there's always a bunch of drunk people. Oh, I love this song! Rah, rah, rah. And I'm like, shut up! Well, I'm thinking that. I'm not usually yelling at them, but especially as a sound engineer, it's like I'm in audio bliss, and then there's somebody right next to me like, oh, I love this song! And I'm just like, anyway.
Oh, man, yeah, that's
the
funny.
thing. Hell is other people. But yeah. Like my idea of a great acoustic show is like a quiet background and people kind of listening intensely, but especially if people are singing along on the, like I try to do sing-alongs on the parts, like, you know, make a getaway, you know, that kind of thing or whatever. Yeah. Like the repeated lines, or don't be a dick, or I don't want to go, like tend to have good backing vocals where people can sing along. So that's the best, when people are like really into it, but quiet enough that if I do a really dramatic soft part, you can hear everything. There's not like people talking in the background, or like coffee machines steaming lattes. But it's hard because, you know, it's like who's gonna host a show besides like a house party? It's gonna be like a lot of times it's a brewery or a cafe, and there's just some noise that's gonna go along with some of that stuff. Or a bar, you know, there's going to be some drunk people in the back.
And like you were saying, you mentioned like playing theaters. That makes a lot of sense in my mind. Because like where I'm from, we have a really small theater, and we do some really, really like small country concerts. But I could totally see like an acoustic rock performance like going down there, because it's a quiet venue. All the people in my town are like 80 years old, so you wouldn't have to worry about like screaming drunk people. But yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it'd be great if I can get the band, the project big enough to where, you know, it can be like that. Like that's kind of my goal, is to be able to get to that point where I could do that. And it, you know, we're not there right now, but that's why I'm trying to just start really like low profile and low stress by doing house parties. So like I just got this little PA, and the idea being like to warm up. So I'm going to Quebec at the end of this month for 4 acoustic shows. And to warm up, I'm having like a little house party, actually 2 of them in my house, just to sing in front of people. And but that's kind of the idea, is that later this year I hope to do touring across Canada in people's houses, and that's basically the idea of just making a little theater kind of space.
Yeah. What would you say has been like the most wild thing that's happened to you on tour? Most wild, outrageous thing.
Oh, I don't know. It's hard to like, life's not usually as exciting as in the film, so it's a bit of a letdown. There's been various little things, like thankfully there hasn't been anything that ended super dramatically, like in a bad way. One time we were pulled over by about 5 or more police cars in the northern part of Quebec, and we were going to the city called Septiles. It's like Tiles, I think is how it's spelled, like SEPT. TILES, something like that. Yeah. But basically, it was like, so we're pretty dedicated. And so I can't remember how many hours north of like the main populated areas of Quebec this was, but it was like so far north that when we stopped to go to get gas and get sandwiches at a Subway inside a gas station, somebody called the police and said there's a bunch of English people in this white box van and it looks really suspicious, you know.
Oh no.
Like, I don't know if they thought, you know, I don't know what they thought, but it was, you know, they thought these guys were up to no good of some sort. Like, why would there be a bunch of English speaking guys in a white box van this far north into Quebecois territory? So it wasn't just like one car pulled us over. It was like, I don't know exactly how many, but it was at least 5, because there were a couple on either side. They blocked the highway going both directions.
Yeah.
Pulled us over and stopped all the traffic.
Oh my gosh. A little bit of Quebec Fast and Furious, huh?
Guns drawn.
Oh no.
And screaming at us in French. And I'm just like, speak English? Please don't shoot.
Oh.
And then another officer came up and she's like, what are you doing here? Where are you from? And I said, we're a band. She's like, oh, you're just a band? Like, yeah, we're a band. We're on tour. We played in Quebec, and then we were coming up here, Septiel. It's like, well, that's uncommon to have, you know, people this far north. Have a nice time. That was it.
Oh man, that's wild.
But yeah, I mean, somebody must have called him and told him, you know, the Manson family is in this white band, or, you know, they're government operatives from, you know, America.
I know, to get 5
Who
cops,
knows?
they must have said something.
Yeah, they got a California license plate. But anyway, I mean, we've had, like, you know, some incidents like that. Luckily, not too bad of consequences. So.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Whew. So, continuing to talk about tours and stuff like that, who would you say has been your favorite band, group, singer to ever tour with? Just any of those.
I'll name a couple. High Standard from Japan. It reminded me of that because their drummer passed away real recently, and that was I haven't seen them in a lot of years, but I just have like happy memories of you know, their amazing music, but also just being really cool guys. And we met them on a Snow Jam tour across Canada. I want to say it would have been like 96 probably, and then they invited us to go to Japan and play with them, with also Dance Hall Crashers. And we were on a bullet train one time, and I guess there was a bad weather, and we were stuck in it for 10 hours or something on one of the days off. So that was exciting. Being stuck on a train all day. And we got along with them and really appreciated them. And then we invited them to play with us in Europe. So we did a whole tour of Europe with them on the same bus and playing all over like Germany. And back in those days, we especially did a lot of shows. So I don't remember exactly, but it might have been like, you know, 45 shows in Europe or something, like in 47 days.
Wow. Dang.
Pretty busy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those guys were good. And another one I would say is No Use for a Name. Like, those guys were amazing. And, were we opening or I think we were opening for them, which was really fun because so the headlining band at a show like that has to load in early and do sound check. And they also have to stay late and, you know, cause they play till the very end of the show and then they have to pack up their merch and leave. Well, by being the middle band, we never got to sound check because usually they sound check the headlining band and then they sound check the first band, which is typically like a local band. So that was like the most fun 10-foot pole tour ever because we got to show up late at every venue and leave early if we wanted. So we decided that tour to just go do a lot of like sightseeing stuff that we normally wouldn't do. So like in Florida, we like took the swamp boat trip, like I don't know, what they call it, the boat with the big fan in the back, the swamp boats. Like
I don't know what those are called, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I don't know, but like they just crash straight through bushes and stuff. I don't know how they know whether it's a soft bush or has a hard tree in it, but they just like crash through stuff. And, and like on that tour, I think we went like go-kart racing, a lot of fishing, it was just like the most leisurely, relaxed tour.
It sounds
so
laid
we would
back.
always show up like No Use for a Name was already done sound checking. We would just like throw our gear up on stage quickly, but we didn't have to sound check. And then the opening band would sound check and play their show, and then we would play, and maybe we'd stay there late enough to I don't know if we'd stay till the end. Maybe we would, just to sell merch. I don't remember now, but anyway, and also they were just great guys. Then the guitar player went on to be in the Foo Fighters.
Wow.
Chris Shiflett was on that tour as the guitar player of No Use for a Name, and he's in the Foo Fighters now. So there you go. Like, you never know.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think our drummer, who was our drummer at the time, is now the drummer, now drums for Papa Roach.
Oh, wow.
So
That's funny. Papa Roach actually just played a show in my area, an hour away from my area yesterday.
Their drummer's name is Tony Palermo, but in 10-foot pole lore, he is known as Tony Smurd. And if you look at the word Smurd, it's basically just drums backwards.
Oh.
On the Rev album, we had a bunch of silly names. Like Scott was Scott Pull My Finger. Steve, our guitarist, was Steve Bum Tree Trunk. I'm sure because he loves horticulture.
Yeah. What was your name?
But mine was Jagard.
Oh, okay.
Like instead of Jagard.
Jagged,
like Dennis Jagard. Because I had jagged guitar riffs. Because I was the one who wrote things like dee 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 dee, like really kind of jerky. So I had kind of a jerky writing style on some songs.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so now this is the part, if you still have a few more minutes, this is the part of the show where we kind of talk about some goofy things. But before that, I wanted to just kind of say one more thing, because usually I try to talk about the band's latest album. So as we were talking about a little bit before, the album Winning, which came out just last year. I'm going to kind of
October, just a few months ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So my favorite songs from that album are Can We Stop Trying to Win, F Around and Find Out, and Silence Is My Enemy. But what would you say your one favorite song from that album is?
Oh, nice. Silence Is My Enemy. Not many people vote for that one. It's not that big on Spotify, but
yeah.
But I kind of keep a look on how what songs do people like.
I like that one.
I like different songs for different reasons. One song I want to pump on there just because people who have already heard the band but maybe didn't hear that record yet might be surprised by the sound of the song Maybe These Are the Good Old Days.
Yeah.
And it starts off kind of heavy and grunge, but then it ends with this outro that's just it's got snaps, it's got an EBO, it's kind of very different. And I was pretty proud of that. From a producer, from a pure producer standpoint, I mean, I feel like the lyrics and everything too are all on point, and I'm proud of it. But especially from a producer standpoint of just sonically, it's very satisfying to go from just a really heavy kind of grunge verse, chorus, and then into this other takes a left turn into this snappy pop but aggro sounding thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, if someone hasn't heard 10-Foot Pole before, that's not the best first song to hear because it's not that representative of our overall sound. But if you're already a 10-Foot Pole fan and you want to kind of blow your mind with how trippy some stuff could be, that's a good one to take a listen to.
Yeah. What would you say is like the 10-foot pole first time listening song everybody should listen to?
That was a good question. Well, you could kind of tell my opinion about the songs on Winning by just starting at the top. I felt like starting with Can We Stop Trying to Win was like a good intro. It just really aggro drums and a nice message, and like kind of like that's kind of the heart of 10-foot pole. And sometimes I think, I mentioned the album escalating quickly, and some people weren't excited about it, and it was pretty experimental. But I also think that even just the way the sequencing of the songs made a difference. Like Ryan really wanted to put two of the slower songs, Don't Be a Dick and Numb, like right near the top. And I kind of felt like if we kept more aggressive songs right at the beginning of the album, then people would have heard those first and been kind of satisfied. Like, okay, 10-foot pole's still fast. But instead we put the fastest song at the very end of Escalating Quickly. It's like, oh, we should probably put that a little earlier.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people only listen to a couple of songs, and by putting this kind of slower ones, I feel like Don't Be a Dick I love that song, but it shouldn't be followed by another like slow song. The Numb song was just too slow, and like Numb was fun, but it shouldn't have been like at the top there. Anyway, so my point being, if you just listen to Winning right from the top, that's what I would recommend doing.
Yeah, just down in order.
I tried to make it so that if you started at the top, you want to keep listening.
That makes sense, yeah.
So that's what I recommend to somebody. And then, so we made an album called Set List, where if somebody had never heard any 10-foot pole and they wanted to kind of hear a best of the old songs, Set List was supposed to be that. Because people would come up to us at shows and say, hey, I loved the songs you played tonight. What record should I buy? And it'd be like, well, the song John was from, and ADD were from Unleashed, and the song My Wall was from Rev, and the song, and just we would just be like, okay, there's 8 different albums these songs are taken from. So we made one album that was kind of like a look back at the, kind of what, like the biggest songs, the songs we thought were the most important. And then we could just say, okay, just get the album Set List, and you could kind of, have a nice summary of, intro to 10-foot pole, I would call it maybe. Plus it's me singing. So like we talked about earlier with the thing with changing singers midstream and stuff, I was kind of like wanting to sing with my voice on those old songs, especially the ones I wrote, and have, so that new fans could kind of also hear like what we sound like at a show now, since obviously we don't have Scott singing those songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it wouldn't be so jarring. Like if somebody came to the show and said, I love the way you sound, how do I get that? We'd go, oh, Set List. If you like how the show sounded today, and then hopefully they like Set List, and then they go back and listen to the other stuff, and there's plenty of variety back there. But so this is me answering that question about what would I ask somebody who is new. I would say that like Set List is a good introduction, although I would still probably say, maybe even just start with Winning because it's the most current.
Yeah. Once again, guys, if you're listening right now and you haven't heard the album Winning, please go check it out. It is definitely worth the listen. I don't know, do what you want while you do it. I like playing video games while I listen to it, so yeah, do it. It's a great album. Yeah.
Nice.
So
when you say Winning, I imagine it in quotes. Just, I don't know, since I'm in an interview and I can talk about it. So I kind of meant it to be sarcastic, like the artwork is MMA fighters just destroying each other.
Yeah.
And so it's meant to be kind of like winning in quotations. Maybe I should have made it in quotations. I was worried if I added quotations that it would mess up, like when people were doing searches or something. Like
Yeah,
I don't
that
know if a
makes
search would
sense.
reject that. So I didn't put it in there. But if you could imagine, please, that winning is meant to be sarcastic in my sarcastic font.
So they're
There's a song
not winning.
on Simmer Down called Sarcasm Decoder. I should have put a way for you to decode that was supposed to be sarcastic.
So now, if you don't mind, the last few questions, this is going to be the goofy segment. So they're kind of quick fire.
Yeah, if people have listened this long.
Yeah.
Now we're going to hit them with like
this is
the silly stuff.
Yes, this is like why you listen to the whole thing, then you get rewarded with the really stupid things. Love these. Okay, so
greatest hits.
I have a brand new question for you. Do you have any pre-show rituals?
Oh, pre-show rituals. Well, none that I think are atypical. I mean, I definitely feel more comfortable if I warm up like vocally, because if I just go out and start singing hard, my voice gets like swollen, and maybe by the end of the show I don't even have a voice. So it's better to kind of ease into it. It's kind of like, for people who like play baseball and take a swing, like you shouldn't swing like full strength without like kind of doing a few practice swings first.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really know much about baseball, but or like weightlifting, like you don't go in and just try to bench press your maximum. You're supposed to warm up a little bit, otherwise you kind of wreck your voice. And then I like drinking coffee, which is also like kind of helps me feel awake. That's about it. I mean, I don't do any kind of like team hug or prayers or anything like that. I like tuning a little bit, tuning the guitar, but I have these new guitars that have at least for the electric stuff, I have these guitars that have an Evertune bridge, which is kind of like a Floyd Rose spring mechanism on every string of the guitar.
Oh, wow.
So the idea is that it should stay in tune pretty well. And I haven't used them at a live show yet. So I'm super excited to like get the band actually playing live shows and theoretically just jump up and play guitar and not even have to tune. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Dang. Wow. Okay.
But yeah, I think that's about it for pre-show rituals. My main issue with pre-show is I get anxiety worried about if I'm giving myself enough time to do my warm-ups, like, cause I like to kind of sing and warm up, but I don't want to be singing in front of people. So I usually try to hide somewhere and go play acoustic guitar, like in a back room or out in the van or something. So I just have to be real careful to like not talk too much at the merch booth beforehand and kind of make my voice tired, or like wait till the last minute. Or sometimes a band stops earlier than planned, the band before us, and then all of a sudden it's okay, quick, you got to get up there and do your show. And so that's my main thing, is just trying to make sure that I'm at a relaxed pace.
Nice. Okay. Now this question, you probably saw it on the list and you probably went, what? So it's 2 parts. What is your favorite fruit?
Favorite fruit? Lately it's been blueberries.
Blueberries. Not
I was
bad.
on tour with Weird Al last year for over 6 months. So I was a sound engineer for 133 shows. He's actually out right now and I'm not with them, but that's another whole long story. But it was amazing, but it was like 6 months of living in a bus and being away from my family. But we played some shows like in, I guess probably was near San Luis Obispo, like kind of middle California. Maybe it was Monterey. But there were these giant blueberries and they were so good that it was like, it sold me on the idea of blueberries again.
There you go.
And like just raw blueberries. And so for the last few months since then, I've been, if I was at a grocery store, I always look for blueberries, and I try to start the day with some fruit. Like sometimes I'm tempted to start with coffee, but you're supposed to have fruit and then let that digest for at least an hour before you have something else. Cause then cause if you have other stuff that has fat in it, it'll all stay in your stomach for a long time. But if you just eat fruit, it supposedly clears like within an hour or so.
There you go.
So I've been trying to do that because especially as getting older, like eating more things like with antioxidants is supposed to be kind of, anti-cancer or whatever, cancer prevention kind of stuff. So yeah,
Blueberries.
I'm gonna embrace blueberries.
Nice. I like blueberries too. They're pretty good.
What's the second part of the question? Is it going to be related to blueberries? Where are we going with this?
Okay, you ready? Now.
Yeah.
If you had
I'm
to
dying to know.
If you had to be a fruit, what type of fruit would you be?
Oh, that's a good question. What kind of fruit would I be?
Most random question you've probably been asked in a while.
Yeah, I guess so. The first thing that comes to mind is pineapple, because they have like such a tough, thorny exterior that, you have to like just commit to killing them before you're gonna actually eat it. So it's not like a blueberry or a grape or something where someone's gonna just randomly bite into you. It's like because you've got this tough exterior that's protecting you. Maybe even a coconut. Is a coconut a fruit? I suppose. I don't know.
I think so. Here, let's Google this.
I don't know if it has seeds.
Oh, let's see.
I guess I'm a little torn between coconut and pineapple.
Fruit. Let's see. Coconut is a fruit. Okay, cool.
Nice.
What makes it a fruit? It is one-seeded. It is one seed. Wow.
Oh, it is the seed.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Kind of like, okay, yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of
like it goes into the ground and then a
like
new
that.
one grows out of it. Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So.
All right. What other goofy questions you got?
Okay. What is your favorite Chinese takeout dish?
Not sure. Like Chinese, probably. I'm gonna kind of move a little sideways on it. I'm craving that Thai coconut soup. I'm not sure what it's called, but you can get this like basically it's like a Thai clear broth soup that tastes like kind of sweet coconut. Since we were just talking about coconuts, I can't get out of that.
Yeah.
And they could put like tofu or chicken or something in it, but that just sounds really good right now. I don't generally go to places that are just like called a Chinese place. Like maybe like what's that one? Like P.F. Chang's or something is pretty good. Like if I was at P.F. Chang's, I would get like the Szechuan. What's it called? Szechuan.
Szechuan beef?
Is it? Pardon?
Is it Szechuan beef?
No, I'm thinking. What's the one? It's not artichoke. I just forgot the word. Asparagus.
Asparagus. Okay. Yeah.
Don't they have like a Szechuan asparagus? I want to say. I don't remember now. But anyway, if it like, I would prefer a Thai restaurant that has that coconut soup. That's where I'd go.
Okay. Last question, and then you can be done. So this question comes from my favorite TV show, Chuck. If you were on a deserted island and could have one sandwich with you, what kind would it be? Please give me as much or as little detail as you want, and keep in mind that you're going to be eating this sandwich every day.
That's a tough one. But because it says every day, I would go back to, in my college years, I lived in I went to Berkeley, but I lived in Richmond, and then at times I lived in San Francisco. And almost every day I had sourdough French bread, like the San Francisco style sourdough bread with tomatoes and cheese. If I was lucky, I'd throw some avocado on there. And there's if I wanted it to be spicy, there's a sauce called the pepper plant. Ooh. It's basically a pepper sauce. It is hot, but it's not just hot. It's not like Tabasco sauce where it tastes like vinegar. It's very much like it tastes like pepper. So I would recommend that. It's good. Like if you eat eggs, that would be good with eggs or anything with cheese on it, basically.
That
called the pepper plant.
Yeah.
So I would do different varieties. I would do variations of that sandwich. Like you got the bread and tomatoes and the cheese is the kind of the root of it, but then you can just add, other things to it. You could add egg or salt and pepper or the pepper sauce or avocado.
Yeah.
But the foundation of the bread and the cheese and the tomato. But it has to be like a good tomato, like Costco has those Campari tomatoes, like basically like hot house tomatoes, like where it really tastes like a tomato.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people are going to make it through this whole interview.
That's
Whoever
okay.
it is, like they're going like, I can't believe he's talking about hot house tomatoes.
Yeah,
I appreciate
these
your
do
time
get a
today,
little
Brandon.
long, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, they could always switch the station or move on, but I really appreciate your inviting me and 10-Foot Pole to be on your show.
Yeah.
And appreciate
you.
all the research you did and knowing enough to ask super intelligent questions about our background and history. And I'm just glad to be making music and glad that anybody cares about it. And I love writing songs and the lyrics and I love when people get something out of it. So I'm going to keep doing it as long as it's fun.
Good.
As long as I can.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing this with me. That was a really fun interview, and I am all out of questions, and you're probably ready to be done, so that's good. Well, I guess with that, anything else you'd like to say? Any more songs or albums you'd like to shout out, or?
No, I think we've punished these people long enough. Thanks for listening, and really appreciate it, and hope to see you all soon.
Sweet. And thank you so much, Dennis, and I hope you have a great rest of your night, and I guess I'll get talking to you later.
You too. Thanks, Brandon. Take care.
You too. Bye. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening to that episode. That was such a fun episode to record. Once again, big shout out to Denny for doing that with me, and please go check out 10footpole.com, and there'll be a link in the description for that website, his YouTube channel, his Spotify, and a few other things like that. So please go check it out. And with that, thank you for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day, guys.